Good morning. This is the subcommittee to study issues relating to animal rights. We have a quorum, and this the appointed time. I call the meeting to order. First of all, I ask the representative of the administration to come in to join us. There are two items on today's agenda. First is issues relating to the safety of pet food products in Hong Kong. The second one is the handling of illegal sale of dogs on the internet. I believe that a lot of members are very concerned about these two topics. In relation to agenda item number 1, that is issues relating to the safety of pet food products in Hong Kong, the Secretariat has given us a background brief. It is in paper CB bracket 21373/16-17 bracket 02. Let me welcome the administration representative. First of all, I ask the Director of Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation, Dr. Leung, to take us through the paper. Thank you. In relation to safety of pet food products in Hong Kong, we have prepared an information paper. First, some background information. Most of the pets kept are dogs and cats in Hong Kong. According to a consultancy survey conducted recently, when it comes to keeping of dogs and cats as pets, there are about 297,000 dogs and 213,000 cats in Hong Kong. When it comes to pet food, there are broadly two types: commercial pet food and homemade pet food. Commercial pet food refers to prepackaged or processed food available in the market, covering dry food, wet food, semi-moist food, freeze-dried food, and frozen food. From the information we have collected in the study, there are more and more pet owners using commercial pet food. About 70% of pet owners in Hong Kong use commercial pet food. In relation to the production, import, or distribution, there is no specific regulation in Hong Kong for their regulation. When it comes to the supply of pet food, in Hong Kong there is no large-scale producer of commercial pet food. Most of it is imported from outside Hong Kong. According to the Census and Statistics Department, in 2016, there was 37.8 million kilogram imported in Hong Kong, coming from the US, the EU, Thailand, Canada, and the mainland. In relation to complaints received, the number of complaints received by the Consumer Council between 2014 and 2016, on average every year, there are about 20 complaints. Most of them are related to the quality of pet food products, or that the food was suspected to have caused illness. There are also other complaints covering sales practices or delivery. Between 2014 and the first quarter of this year, the AFCD has received about 10 complaints related to pet food. Most of them were related to hygiene and quality. Our observation is that there is no commonly adopted standard on the international level. Major pet food exporters, say for example the US and the EU, have prominent pet food manufacturing industry, supplying domestic and export markets. When it comes to manufacture, packaging, labeling, and distribution, there are regulations in place. Say, for example, those covering safe hygiene and hazard control standards, use of additives, and standards regarding undesirable substance. There has been no major incidents concerning safety of pet food in Hong Kong in recent years. Most of the pet food products in Hong Kong are imported from places, and these same products are being consumed in their domestic markets as well. Although there has been no major pet food incidents, but we would like to have information so that we can keep track of the situation. We will soon ask a contractor to study and test pet food products available in Hong Kong. In the coming 2 years, there will be 6 rounds of random sampling of pet food products. Mostly they will be pet food for dogs and cats. There will be different types as well, say for example dry and canned food and semi-moist food. For other pets, say birds and rodents, they will be covered as well. We will sample about 360 samples for tests. The scope of tests were based on the tests of other jurisdictions, say for example harmful substances, microbes, and heavy metal. We hope to get a better understanding of the safety of commercial pet food in Hong Kong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Leung. Now we'll open the floor for questions. I would like to remind members that we have tabled also submissions given by SPCA. Right now we have Jeremy Tam and Mr. Chen Chi Chun. You have indicated to speak 4 minutes each. Mr. Jeremy Tam, please. Thank you. First of all, I see from the paper in paragraph 5 that most of the pet food is imported from places outside Hong Kong. But now you can see online that there is homemade pet food for cats and dogs for sale. So would you consider also regulating the sales of homemade pet food? And you have seen that there have been 3 cases of Salmonella found in as complaints the year before. So there is potential risk in pet food. We see in Taiwan that there is actually 22.3 and 25 regulate in Taiwan that regulates pet food in Taiwan, and it regulates the substances, expiry dates, how to preserve it, etc. Would Hong Kong also find it necessary to regulate pet food on this end? Director. Thank you. First of all, for online sales of pet food, most of the pet food in Hong Kong is imported, and they are produced overseas. And homemade pet food only accounts very small number. I think we need to better educate pet owners. because we must educate them to find appropriate pet food for the animals, and they must also first consult with the vet to ensure that the most appropriate food is given to the pet. According to the Consumer Council, there have been complaints related to raw food with salmonella found. According to our understanding, this kind of pet food is also imported from major production outside of Hong Kong, and this happens on occasion. And when there are such incidents, we will follow up with the related producers and to see whether there is a need for recall. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Well, there is not too much time, so I'd like to follow up on the question. So for 2015, regarding a salmonella found in raw food, have you followed up with the importer or the producer of the food? Perhaps I could refer to my colleague. Basically, we will follow up when there's a need. No, I want to understand whether you have done it and not whether you see or you consider that there is a need. Maybe Dr. Young can address this question. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the 2015 case. We did approach the company, but we did not receive a formal response for them. The company declared that they stopped the sales of the products and recalled the products because of two substances, and they have expressed it to their consumers. They did not find any suspected substances in their products themselves, but they would monitor it closely. So you see, Madam Chair, there's not even a follow-up from the company. That's why I raised the question. You said you would follow up. Well, you did that in 2015, but you did not even receive a formal response for them. We can ask again in the next round. Next, Mrs. Tan Chi-chun. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, according to my understanding, there is not any regulation targeting the regulation of pet food products. So there is nothing much you can do for the companies overseas. Well, if they're willing to all cooperate, then that's good. But I mean, even if they don't cooperate, then there's nothing you can do about that in principle. We do not have any regulation for pet food products, but pet food products are for consumption as well. So can the current regulations for food also be used for pet food? Let's say it's a can of food. The date has already expired. For sales of expired canned food, can we also deal with that under the current legislation for food for human consumption? Dr. Chang, I'm sorry, the legislation in Hong Kong is mainly for food for human consumption, so it wouldn't be able to apply it to pet food products. Generally speaking, in relation to pet food products, then it will be covered under the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. Well, you said there have not been any major incidents in the past 2 years. Let's say poisonous substance is found in pet food outside of Hong Kong. So is it under our current legislation we cannot require it to be recalled in Hong Kong? Director. Yes, currently we do not have any legislation in relation to pet food products aside from the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. If there is a violation of Trade Descriptions Ordinance, then the Hong Kong Customs can handle the matter. Well, there have been such cases before. Very often when we follow up with the importers or companies, they cooperate with us. And if it is confirmed that some suspected substances are found, they would usually stop the sales immediately and recall the products. Well, Madam Chair, we understand that we are starting from zero to discuss the safety of pet food products. But I believe that it is good news that we can start a discussion. We know about the situation of sales of pet food product, but what would the next step be? What if you found suspected substances in pet food again? Would you really consider formulating legislation on that, Director? Yes, this discussion can help us understand the safety of pet food products sold in Hong Kong. The safety issue is actually quite well managed right now. We just need to ensure that we can raise awareness in the public and in pet owners so that they would understand what kind of food would be more appropriate and safe for their pets. Oh, it's my turn to ask question now. I also want to follow up on colleagues' questions. Well, you said there are 37.8 million kilograms of pet food imports sold. Can you tell us more about it, Dr. Chung? We do not have the amount aside from what is given to us by the Hong Kong Customs and Excise Department. That I think is the number for over 90% of the food imports. Well, would you consider conducting a statistic survey so that we would know how much is being sold in Hong Kong each year? All right. We heard just now that pet food mainly comes from the United States. That is the largest importing country, and then other major sources include member states of the European Union, Canada, and the mainland. Do you know which country has a regulation for the safety of pet food products? Dr. Young, please. The United States, Thailand, and the mainland have all formulated legislation for safety of pet food. Canada also has its own industry regulations. So how about for the EU? Yes, also as well. Would you consider that before we set standards in Hong Kong and formulate regulations, to consider a requirement? Let's say we only import food products from sources with strict adopted standards. As another member has asked, you know that for some pet food products, there might be unknown substances or poisonous substances. Therefore, you need legislation. Because if you don't have a legislation in place, then even though there is poisonous substance in the can and pets consume it, then fall ill, then there is still nothing to be done because the food can still be sold. So perhaps we could consider adopting certain standards that are already being adopted in other countries. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. We can consider your suggestion. But I would like to first mention a few points. For import and export goods in Hong Kong, it's all free trade. Let's say for food for human consumption, there is a different set of standards. We would also conduct a random inspection for foods suitable for human consumption, but we would not just ban the imports, just as you said. Well, yes, so please provide us with how much the food imports cost each year, and then consider to looking at the legislation from other countries. Next, Ms. Claudia Mo. Well, thank you. Well, we're discussing pet food products here. We keep on saying the term pet, but we're talking about animal rights here because you're talking about pets, owned pets. So maybe we shouldn't use the term pet. We could use domestic animals instead of the term pets.
Well, we have to feed dogs, cats, rabbits, turtles. Well, when it comes to, say, dogs and cats, even if you give them just plain rice, they will be very happy. So this is a commercial element. There are indeed some products, pet food products, that are added with artificial substance to make it more tasty. Over the years, or prolonged consumption might cause kidney failure or some problem. I don't know about that. But if the AFCD and the FHB are so busy, and if they want to look at food safety, I think they should rearrange their priority. They should first start with animal, the safety issue of animals. There are also some minor amendments related to dogs. If you knock down a dog, you don't have to make a report. You can go scot-free. But these minor amendments are needed. But instead, you first want to deal with legislation related to safety of pet food, then I have great reservations, and I do mind about that, because the real spirit of animal rights is to look at their fundamental welfare and well-being. Of course, if you want to do everything at the same time, I'll be very happy. You say that the AFCD is very busy and the FHB has to oversee food safety and health all over Hong Kong. I don't see anything happening in the near future. I don't have any questions. I just want to express my views. Do you need an answer? No. Next, Mr. Eddie Ju. Thank you. I echo what Ms. Claudia Mo said. We do need a comprehensive and complete legislation for animal rights. When it comes to animals, refer to legislations related to animals, well, it's loaded with a lot of historical reasons. Say, for example, work horses, work oxen. And in paragraphs 2 and 3 of the paper, it says that they now use the Public Health Animal and Birds Chemical Residues Regulations. This regulation is related to fodder for food production animals. How can we consider it as a whole? How can we change from the old mentality from animals used in primary production to assist in primary production to all animals? We need a different set of legislation. This Public Health Animal and Birds Chemical Residues Regulations, Section 14, mention about regulation of pet food. It says that if it contains for prohibited chemicals, and if the level of prohibited substance or dangerous substance might endanger the health of animals or the health of human beings. So the scope of the section is rather wide. You may only need a simple amendment, that is, to change the definition or the interpretation from the narrow definition of fodder for food production animals to all animals. So you only have to make a minor change to achieve the same goal. Can we hear from the director? Let me say it again to clarify. When it comes to safety of pet food, I think we don't need legislation to do more, because current legislations and regulations are enough. And as to whether we do need to do a bit more, we will have to wait for the report from the consultant before we decide the way forward. The point mentioned by Mr. Chu. Under the Public Health Animal and Birds Chemical Residues Regulations, the application is on food animals and fodder for food production animals. This is a subsidiary legislation under a primary legislation. The amendment is not as simple as you might think. Next, second round. Mr. Jeremy Tam, 3 minutes. Thank you. Just now we heard from the AFCD that there has been incidents of problematic pet food. The importer was notified, and the importer said that there would be product recall. I want to hear about more details. When was it? How many importers? How many different brands? And what was the problem that caused the recall? Because I want to know whether the action taken was effective in dealing with the situation and how it was first discovered. The second point, paragraph 11, you said that you will take reference of the standards of overseas jurisdictions. So what jurisdictions and what standards? I will defer to Dr. Michelle Young. Thank you. To answer Mr. Tam's question, from time to time we receive inquiries from members of the public about pet food. So we do keep track of information related to pet food. Say in the US, there was information related to pet food recall in the US and in the EU. I tried to put up with it, and I've been waiting for 45 seconds, and still my question was not answered. I'll give you more time if there are no other members. But please answer my question. When did it happen? What brands? I'm not going to go into background information then. From the information we have, from 2004, in 2004 there was one recall, in 2007 there was another recall, and in 2002, 3, and in 2003 there was another case. In 2012 there were 3, 2013 1. We have not received any information about pet food recall after that. So what countries and what standards? Is the FDA website of the US and also a website of the EU. My understanding is that you found the information on the internet and you inform importers, and they did a total recall. So has there been any cases when you asked importers to recall the product and that request was turned down? And again, this study to be conducted, what other jurisdictions will you cover? I think your question has been answered. US. When it comes to standards, we will take reference from countries with regulations and legislation, say the US, EU, Japan. In Australia, there may be no regulations, but there are some standards adopted by the industry. I understand that in the Department of Health, there are some standards of food and medicine, and before Hong Kong have our own standard, they would take reference from overseas standards, say for example UK or the European Union. So before we have our own legislation, could you please try to align the standards, say adopt the standard of one jurisdiction, and products will have to meet that standard before it can be imported into Hong Kong, so that it will give pet owners assurance. From time to time we hear about or see about expired food or meat products that has a very long shelf life. So we wonder how much preservatives have gone into that. Mr. Jeremy Tam, third time, 3 minutes. My question was not answered. You said in 2002, 3, and then various cases in different years. But what hasn't been answered was that has there been any case when information was found, you informed the importers, and your request was ignored? Has it happened that you were ignored? Usually they're very cooperative. Most of them, they are their own product, so they don't want to cause any bad feelings. They may exchange product with pet owners, and in the case of food recall, the product will be taken down the shelves. Any mention about such recall on the AFCD website? Because when members of the public have bought the product, they would not keep track of the information on the internet, let alone that of the AFCD. But you have to find a way to inform the public, or maybe you ask the importer to inform their customers. Sometimes it may be difficult if you don't if you did not order the pet food. It may be difficult to reach, but you have to find a way to reach them. And these food recall, what's the problem? Excessive preservatives, heavy metal, food that has expired. Director, I'll answer the first question, and then I will defer to Dr. Young about product recall. Overseas manufacturers or overseas authorities when we've learned about the information about the problem of that product, we would inform the importers. And as to whether the official channel is to be used to disseminate the information, I'll have to look into it, because we're talking about brand names and there may be legal issues.
We will go back and consider that if we receive information like this in the future, how can we better publicize the information? Of course, the importer will also have the responsibility to notify the customers. For the details of the case, perhaps Dr. Young can answer that question. Well, thank you. There was a time when melamine was a problem, and so the producers recalled the product, and there were some other cases with microbial contaminants, and some other were in relation to the information on the supplements provided. Next, we have Mr. Wong Ting Guang. Thank you. Let's say problems are identified with the pet food products. So other than requesting the recall of products, would there also be penalty for the importers? Have you also considered conducting random sampling of the pet food products to ensure that the products are safe? Director, please. Thank you. When we know of an issue with the pet food, then we would follow up with the importer to discuss with them how to take action, because right now we do not have any legislation in regulating pet food. Regarding sampling, in the past we have never conducted sampling on a frequent basis, as we do not have such a legislation in place, and as there is no commonly adopted standards at the international level for us to make comparisons. Upcoming, we are going to conduct a study to take random sampling of pet food and test the pet food. Has Hong Kong contacted your counterparts in other countries? And do you exchange information on the quality of pet food to ensure that inferior pet food would not be sold in the market? Oh, that is a very good question. So is there an information exchange mechanism in place? Dr. Chung, please. We do not have direct contact with the producers overseas, but we would know of how they're doing on their websites. We do this on a frequent basis, but for Hong Kong producers, we contact them and we meet with them every now and then to discuss such issues. So I can take it that this is all passive action because you would only go browse their websites when you have time. Do you take any proactive approach? Let's say EU, Australia, Japan. Would you consider setting up a communication channel with these countries so that information could be given to you promptly? Could you take a more proactive approach instead of just browsing through their websites sometimes? Well, you meet with the Hong Kong producers. Of course, they would say that they are selling high-quality products, so that would not be of much help. Do you really proactively contact with organizations in other countries? Dr. Chung? We do have direct contact with the principal veterinary officers in other countries, and when there are issues, they would contact us directly. We also proactively meet with the importers in Hong Kong because the imported products may not exactly be the same same group or the same box of a product sold elsewhere. Mr. Jeremy Tam. The administration said that there are three issues. One is melamine, one is contaminants, and thirdly the supplements different with the descriptions. So you have identified these three main issues. So you said that if what is inside the pet food is not the same as a description, then it will be dealt with under the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. So for supplements, does it mean that it's not when you found it, has the Trade Descriptions Ordinance already become effective? If it has already become effective, then did you refer this case to the Hong Kong Customs and Excise Department? Dr. Young. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the supplement case, the information came from the FDA in the United States. Basically, the producer knew of this possibility of problem, and therefore they recalled the product themselves. So when did this happen? 2012. So do you remember whether the Trade Descriptions Ordinance became effective at that time? I don't have the information on hand right now, but the producer said there might be issues with those items. Well, Yes, so you say that you use the Trade Descriptions Ordinance to regulate. So in 2012, there was this one incident. So I need to check whether this ordinance was already in place and effective at that time. I think that if you found some issues with the Trade Descriptions Ordinance, you should refer it to the Customs and Excise Department. Otherwise, there is not much you can do under the current legislation. We do not see us being as any type of gatekeeper, because even though there are problems or misleading trade descriptions, you have not dealt with it. Well, but of course, I can't just come to any conclusion right now, as I don't know whether the ordinance became effective on that day. Dr. Chang, I'm not exactly sure, but if I remember correctly, the Trade Descriptions Ordinance became effective in 2013, and so this case was not covered as it occurred in 2012. Dr. Chang, well, if I remember exactly, the labels in the United States would only be listed in accordance to the levels of the supplements. So it would not say the exact percentage. It would just put down the different supplements included with the highest level on the top in descending order. Many countries many countries in Asia even already have drawn legislation on safety on pet food. Of course, I know that we will not come up with any legislation soon. I just hope that you would sort of regulate pet food products, because we now have 510,000 cats or dogs in Hong Kong. In neighboring countries such as Singapore, we're only talking about 100,000 cats and dogs, and they already have formulated legislation to protect these animals. So I hope that we would be able to do something in the near future. Thank you for attending this agenda item. We're now going to move on to item 2 for today. We have the same group of representatives, and this item will be on the handling of illegal sale of dogs on the internet. Director, can you take us through this paper? Thank you, Madam Chair. So this paper is in relation to handling of illegal sale of dogs on the internet. Let me give you a brief introduction of the paper. Sales of dogs and other animals have been required to obtain an animal trader license. In the past, people were free to sell their own pet dogs without the need to obtain any license or permit. Since March 20th of 2017, under the Public Health, Animals and Birds Trading and Breeding Regulations, we have taken out this waiver. So even if it's the dog owner himself, that person would still need to obtain an ATL. So any person who sells or offers to sell a dog is required to obtain an animal trader license, a dog breeder license, or a one-off permit from the AFCD. The license owner if he wants to advertise the dog, is required to display the license or permit number as well as the microchip number of the dogs. The dog offered for sale must also be vaccinated by a registered vet. The issued vaccination certificate must be transferred to the buyer when the dog is sold. In addition, licensed dog breeders and traders must keep and sell the dogs at the licensed premises and cannot display the dogs elsewhere. All licensees are required to display the license in a prominent place in the licensed premises. We have been conducting a series of publicity programs at different media and channels to remind the public of the new regulations and to teach the public to become a responsible pet owner, and to encourage those intending to buy a dog to buy only from licensed permit-holding persons. Since 2010, a dedicated investigation unit has been established under AFCD with a remit to monitor advertisements for animal trading and boarding activity on the Internet and respond to related complaints. Our investigation unit not only monitors activities on the Internet, it also conducts regular inspections to prevent and detect any illegal trading activity. Over the past few years, we have conducted on average about 900 Internet inspections annually against suspected illegal online sale of dogs. In the past 5 years, we have 9 prosecutions against illegal online sale of dogs and were initiated, and all cases were successful. And the number of complaints has decreased from 27 in 2012 to 15 in 2016.
The purpose of our enforcement action is to combat illegal sale activities. In relation to what happens after the enactment of the new regulation, well, there has been an enhancement of regulation of licensing and regulation. And we have also stepped up in our law enforcement action. We have increased manpower in this regard. As at April this year, after the enactment of the regulation, we have received 19 complaints in relation to offers on the Internet to sell dogs. We have done 3 decoy operations. We are dealing with the investigation. We have to collect evidence. We hope we will have sufficient evidence to initiate prosecution. If members of the public have suspicions about certain activities, they're most welcome to call 1823 hotline to contact us. Thank you, Director. There are 2 members. First, Jeremy Tam. Second one is Ray Cham and myself. 4 minutes, Mr. Tam. Thank you. Well, since 139B came into effect, well, there are some press media organizations that are more active in their decoy operation. I have information about 3 different premises. These 3 premises are not covered by a valid license. Some of them fully knew that there should be one, but they did not make an application, whereas others even ask the reporter where to get a license. So I want to know, after this regulation has come into effect, how many cases how many licenses have you approved, and how many one-off permit? There are two different types even for an individual. I ask about the one-off permit. One-off permit, that is pet owners who would like to sell their pets. So far we have not granted any permit. We have not received any applications. Well, I think that explains a lot. The biggest problem we have encountered is home breeding, and then they put them on sale on the internet. You sounded quite grand when you were trying to sell this Cat 139B. So now we find that there has been no applications. It's difficult to imagine. No one used this way to sell the dogs they have bred in their own home. I see that you have done 3 decoy operations, and you talked about the increasing manpower. What was your plan to have these decoy operation every month? And if the figures don't tally, what happened? Let's hear from the director. Well, no application. Does it mean that it's not successful at all, this regime? And what about the number of decoy operations? Well, offspring of dogs of your own pet. Well, if you want to get a permit, it's not a one-off permit. It's dog breeder license. So far, there has been 7 applications for license A, that is minor ones. One-off permit is granted in special circumstances. Say, for example, the pet owner is emigrating or can't keep the pet and wants to sell it, then it's a one-off permit. For selling dogs, then it has to be covered by license A or license B. These 7 licenses. So how many dogs have been sold? They are only applications. And the decoy operation. The number of decoy operations depend on the situation. If we have suspicions, say for example from an advertisement on the internet, if we have sufficient information that warrants further action to collect information, then we will deploy a decoy operation. But if we can't find that person or the perpetrator, we will not have a decoy operation. So there is no standard as to the number of decoy operations. Well, you said in the paper that you have done 3 decoy operations. Previously, when you were trying to ask us to support Cat 139B, you said that you would try to do as much as possible. There are cases uncovered by the press, not you. So decoy operations is when you take an initiative, not when you receive a complaint. Can you maybe tell me how many people in your establishment are responsible for decoy operations? Do you actually have sufficient manpower? I think Mr. Tam's very concerned about your manpower level. Including additional and internal deployment, we have over 30 people. We have 30 people or so for enforcement. We will take the initiative to check advertisements on the internet and in other forms to see if there are any such advertisements and if the people concerned are covered by a license. Decoy operation is only one form of enforcement. So we don't just sit there and wait for people to make a report. We have a dedicated team to look through advertisements and websites. Next is Mr. Ray Chan. Thank you. When we discussed about Cap 139B, we knew that the intent was good, but we asked a lot of questions and we had suspicions because we were worried about the effectiveness of implementation and enforcement. The director said that there has been no application for one-off permit, but it doesn't mean that there has not been any transactions. And the number of license A is small. Can you tell us the actual information? Assuming that the seller and the buyer don't know about that, so they proceeded with the transaction. And now the dog has to be, the name of the ownership of the dog has to be transferred. And if you were told that, well, I just found the dog or someone gave it to me, would you allow the transfer? If someone has bought a dog on the internet and there is no license covered, and I think that it says that you can't trade a puppy until the dog has got a microchip. So you test the DNA? No. Well, you will ask whether the dog was bought from a domestic, from a home breeder. Any database or any information we can find on the internet about license A and license B holders, because this will enable us to find out whether the seller has been covered by a license, or we just call 1823. I'll defer to Dr. Chow. We are actually preparing for the search information. Well, there are two different ways to get a license. One is to have the license transferred in a unit in the AFCD. Mr. Chen asked whether questions will be asked about the provenance of the dog when a license transfer was requested. So far, there has been no requirement to disclose the provenance of the dog. We can ask the Animal Management Center to look into it. And as to whether we can verify the license of advertisement, well, you can call the 1823. It operates round the clock, and if the call is made during office hours, we'll be able to give you an immediate answer. We have information on the animal trader license on the internet, but for Cat A and Cat B license, well, since it's something new, we have given the contractor who manages our website a set of information, but they need some time, so it will be about tomorrow or the day after tomorrow when it's available on the internet. I strongly ask the AFCD to consider this. When a transfer of dog license or an application for a dog license is applied for, you should not just ask for documentary proof. You should also make sure that the seller is covered by a valid license. We did not a full discussion on these topics, and Cap 139B has been enacted. Well, I won't call this trying to rein in a horse after it has bolted, try to close the gate when the horse has bolted, but transaction continues when the seller is not covered by a valid license. Well, otherwise buyers will not care where they get the dog from, because you won't ask them questions. Well, it's been less than 2 months since the enactment of 139B. The AFCD actually is doing a lot. You have to be patient and give them a bit more time to do what they're supposed to do. Mr. Ben Chan. Well, we heard that there has only been 3 decoy operations, 19 complaints. So, these decoy operations taken on your own initiative. The 3 decoy operations are done pursuant to complaints. There were 19 complaints. 4 were against the same advertisement. We dealt with 6 complaints with the 3 decoy operations. There are some cases that have actually been covered by a license after we have checked. It's just that they did not put the relevant information on the advertisement.
For 6 cases, the link provided online already was deleted when we continued an investigation. All right, so your ordinance has been effective for only 2 months. We don't expect to see many decoy operations these days. But it seems that there has not been anything new in the way you collect evidence, and mainly you rely on complaints by the public. If you're being so passive, would it give the impression to the public that you were just being very passive, that you're not going to do anything without complaints? Oh, thank you, Mr. Chan. We do have a team with a remit to monitor advertisements on the internet. We have 10 cases being dealt with on our own investigation. And so have you done any decoy operations? It is underway. So we want to know the arrangements in work operations. You told us there would be advertisements monitoring and also hold meetings with the industry so that you can better understand the situation. Thank you, Mr. Chan, for your question. During the public consultation of 139B, we had a very strong discussion with the industry, because many of them are in support of our regulation. For the 19 complaint cases, some of them are information forwarded to us by industry-related organizations. Therefore, we have been working closely together with them to enforce the regulations and to protect the welfare of the animals. Well, we also hope that you would proactively take action, because in the past there is no set regulation, but now you do, so you really should enforce it. Otherwise, it would not be very ideal. Thank you. Any other response? Director. Thank you, Madam Chair. We are going to continue to enforce action and to keep close communication with related organizations. Well, I also have some questions. I'd like to follow up on Mr. Chen Chi-chun's question. Would you strengthen information needed for the buying or selling of dog, such as information on the parents of the dogs and which registered owner it belongs to? Dr. Chow, under our current legislation, all dogs before sales of dogs will need to visit the vet to receive a vaccination certificate, and a DNA sampling would also be taken. The mother and the baby should come together, and there must also be an oath taken that the offspring did come from the mother. The buyer would so a copy of that would also be given to the buyer from the seller. Well, ever since the implementation of 139B, so the owner of the DBL, would that also be the same with the previous regulations under the 139B? Well, for B, category B license, so there are also 13 who own ATL who have transferred it to the B. So originally there were 15 who own ATL, and then so after implementation of 139B, out of the 15, their license expired, and therefore they needed to transfer to the DBL. So for these 13 license owners, do they belong to the previous owners? So have you ever visited their breeding premises? We are now dealing with their cases, and we would visit the breeding environment. Well, yes. According to reports, some of the old breeding premises, some of them are not able to continue operation because of the implementation of 139B. So, this is something we got from reports. Have you gathered any information on that point? Oh, thank you for your question. According to our information at the AFCD, we have looked at the information submitted to dog owners from January to April and compared them with the information from January to April this year, and we have not seen any obvious increase in numbers. Therefore, right now, there are no statistics supporting the fact that some breeding premises have ceased operations. Well, I don't quite understand. Well, let's not deal with the trader license. So we also have a dog breeder license right now and a one-off permit. So now for a license, then it's for less than for dogs not exceeding number of 5, and then for a B license we're talking about more than 5 dogs. So we're still talking about 15 DBL licenses in total. Well, for new applications for the DBLB, 139B, we're talking about 13 new applications. For those who come to renew their licenses, we're talking about 2, and there are still some with old licenses that have not come to renew their licenses because not yet expired. But for new applications, we received 13. When we consulted the public on 139B, we have gathered information that even though they are doing doing breeding, they find it difficult to obtain licenses. So with the new regulation in place, with all our requirements and parameters, you can see that everybody would need to obtain a license or a permit. So we do expect to see new applications for the breeder license. Well, I hope you would follow up closely on this issue. We support 139B in the hope to combat any illegal breeding premises, and some of which you don't even know exist. So now with 139B, everybody comes up to apply for licenses. I don't want to hear that you can only conduct 3 decoy operations per year because of inadequate manpower. Mr. Chen Chi-chun has already asked whether you have enough staff. We would support you if you need to hire more staff. This point we are very clear about. If you do not have enough people to conduct inspections, then we would be very upset. Mr. Kwong Chun-yu. Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a really heated debate on 139B because when it came into effect, it was found that there are many illegal breeding of dogs. And as Madam Chair said, we're only talking about 13 new applications for DBL with 2 renewing the licenses. So it's altogether 15 with DBL licenses. But of course, no one would believe that there are only 15 licenses for DBL in Hong Kong. So the administration does have the responsibility to find where or how many illegal breeding premises there are. You cannot rely solely on information given by the media. Do you take proactive action in law enforcement? I want to know whether you do go find those illegal breeding premises. So do you conduct any inspections? Well, we've never said that we do not have enough people. Well, I'm quoting Madam Chair. She just said you do not have enough manpower. Well, I'm just afraid you don't have enough manpower. Well, I think we do have enough staff working on law enforcement of 139B. We do have a dedicated unit to conduct inspection. We also have a dedicated investigation unit to monitor advertisements for animal trading on the internet. And of course, we also look into information provided by the media and from the public. So have you ever, have you found any illegal premises and have conducted investigation to take out those breeding premises. Well, yes, because I do have friends who have showed me photos of that. Have you ever conducted any operation on these illegal premises? Dr. Chow, please. We have received 19 complaints, and we do have a dedicated unit to monitor online activities. We have completed 3 out of 6 decoy operations. And for some information provided when we browsed the internet, we could not find those things anymore, and so some of the cases, they are still under investigation, and we need time to arrange for the decoy operations. So we are gradually taking this step by step. So does it mean that according to my understanding, you have successfully wiped out an operation of illegal breeding? Because it seems that you have to rely on the media and on NGOs, and then they would be in your waiting line. Because, for example, that it might be someone owning 4 dogs and trying to sell 3 dogs out because they don't have to apply for a license because the number has not reached 5. So we expect that 139B would allow you to conduct operations to take out illegal operations. We cannot rely only on the NGOs. Well, yes, so Mr. Kwong only knows whether you have successfully wiped out any illegal operation. So you're talking about after March 20th?
係，頭先都有提過。
We have mentioned this. We have done 3 decoy operations involving illegal sale of dogs without a license. So there has been no decoy operations to these appalling breeding farms, but they have done 3 decoy operations covering advertisements on the internet of illegal sale of dogs. And they are under investigation. But I'm not happy about it. Mr. Kwong, if you received any information about these appalling breeding farms, then you give us the information. We will get together the director, the vets, and we'll all go together to close them down. Well, if you want to mount an operation, you have to do it covertly. If you just barge in, then you won't be able to do anything. Well, then we will be quiet. We'll do it stealthily, and we'll go there at night. No, it's nothing to do with that. These are the difficulties encountered by voluntary workers. You hear about the screams and wailing of dogs and cats, but you can't go in because it's private property. You won't be able to do anything if you go there and visit as a group. There should be a covert operation and stealth investigation. Do you have an investigation team? We do. And that's exactly what they are doing. If there are suspected cases, we will go and collect information. And sometimes we will deploy covert operation. So that's something that we have been doing. As Mr. Kwong said, that we don't go there in a high-profile way to barge in. Well, that's what the chair lady said. We have to plan very carefully in order to get something done. That's exactly what we were discussing. You have to wait to receive a complaint. At the same time, I think that you need to plan. You have to have some strategies. instead of just sitting there to wait for someone to come to you with a report. That's your function. Would you consider doing a bit more? Say, for example, you will lock onto a target. Say, for example, the police investigating into a drug case, you will have a target, and then you will conduct covert operation. Yes, I'm sure that you will receive a lot of intelligence. Well, if it's some underground breeding farm, the puppies will have to be sold through a channel. That's why we're trawling the internet to look for advertisements or advertisements in the publications. And then we'll be able to identify suspicious cases before we take further action. And if we have found a targeted premises, we will conduct a decoy operation. And we welcome members of the public and the media to forward information they have found. We don't just sit there and wait for complaints. Then would you do a bit more appeals to the public to ask them not to buy dogs from suspicious source or dubious source? We have enhanced our publicity and education. Recently, we have issued a guide for care of dogs, and it says that if you want to keep a dog, then you should find some information, ask for the vaccination certificate, ask about the source of the doggy, and also go to licensed breeder. And we have never stopped when it comes to publicity and education. Well, I have some information about requests for assistance. I will give you the information to the department. I must emphasize that it should not be done in a high-profile way. So you should take actions against illegal breeding farms. Of course, we will follow up. Next, Mr. Eddie Ju. I heard from the director that the bulk of the work was done on the internet, and in paragraph 3 it says that on the advertisement, the license number and the license number of the dog has to be stated. I'll try to do some investigation on the internet. Well, what if it's someone who is covered by animal trader license? There will be a number. I don't know anything. And when I see that number, I don't know where that dog comes from. There is a number, is the number of the animal trader license. I don't know whether that number actually belongs to the seller mentioned in the advertisement. And I can't find out information about where the dog comes from. If you say that, well, if you have a number there, that means it is legitimate, and when you do your enforcement, when you conduct your enforcement action, you only look for the number. It will be very easy for people to deceive you, because I can simply make up that number. Or I just copy a number from your website. And even if I'm a genuine license holder, I don't know whether someone has stolen my number. The SPCA targets advertisements on the internet, because if you allow advertisements on the internet, then it will create confusion. If it's so easy to just place advertisement and give you misleading information, I think you need to consider whether to regulate internet advertisements. What's the situation now? Can you regulate that? Will you ask them to specify more information? I think selling of any animal on the internet should be banned, because once it's on the internet, you won't be able to control it. But if it's banned, then you won't be able to trace underground transaction. Dr. Chow. First, the requirement of the license. When it comes to advertisement, whether it is in a publication or on the internet, it has to carry a license number. And if it involves only one dog, then you have to have the number of the microchip. This will facilitate tracing and verifying whether it is legitimate or not. We will check all the information related to that number to see if it is indeed a genuine license holder. If we have any suspicions, we will carry out investigation. And you mentioned about a suggestion of the SPCA saying that sale of animal advertisements on the internet should be banned. Well, we attach a lot of importance of animal rights. That's why we have Cap 139B to regulate commercial activities related to pets. And if we have a complete across the board ban on online advertisement, then we need to know whether we do have the power to do so. And Chairman, you have mentioned, if we introduce a complete ban, it will be more difficult for us to find cases of suspected illegal sale of dogs. Let's hear from the director. I just want to talk about whether it is, well, Deputy Secretary, I just want to talk about whether it is feasible to have a complete ban on online advertisement. Well, the internet has no boundaries, so it will be very difficult to do it. Any follow-up? If not, that's the end of this agenda item. I thank the administration for coming. The next meeting will take place on the 26th of June. Is a Monday in the morning. We will discuss about the promotion of animal-friendly measures, including those related to public residential housing, public transport, and also public open space. We will consider inviting organizations and groups of animal rights to ask them to attend. In July, in principle, we won't have another subcommittee meeting. So if members would like to add items to the agenda, please tell the Secretariat so that we can make arrangements. That's the end of the meeting, and I thank the administration for joining us. Thank you.